There's no dignified way to say, I was homeless. It's not a badge. It's not a confession. It's just a fact, one that clung to me like yesterday's damp hoodie. The night it started raining sideways, I was huddled beneath the concrete overpass on 3rd and Minerva. My shopping cart, a metal rattlebox of everything I owned, was parked beside me, wheels twisted like a stubborn memory. I had 3 blankets, all damp, and 1 flashlight that flickered in protest every 10 minutes. That was the day before my life changed forever. That was the day I got the letter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Hi. My name is Isabel Hart. And yes, I lived under a bridge. But a few seconds before we get into the wild part of this story, I just want to say, you're someone who believes in karma, unexpected twists, and stories that prove rock bottom isn't the end. Please hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel grow, and your support means the world. Now, back to the part where I became the heiress of a $100 million mansion I didn't even know existed. I had been on the streets for 3 years. No drugs. No crime. Just bad luck, a medical bill avalanche, and the kind of family that teaches you love only comes with conditions. My mother died when I was 17. My dad remarried a woman who used "you're ungrateful" as both a greeting and a threat. After a messy fight over who'd pay for my college dorm, they stopped answering my calls. I couch-surfed, then slept in my car, and eventually lost that too. I wasn't lazy. I was just erased. You'd be surprised how easy it is for society to stop seeing you. Until that letter arrived. It was a crisp white envelope tucked inside a Ziploc bag with my name, Isabel Hart, printed in formal cursive. The mailman had dropped it at the shelter 2 blocks from the soup kitchen, where I had left my name months ago for mail-in benefits that never came. I almost tossed it. I thought it was junk. But something about the seal, thick wax, deep burgundy, pressed with a crest, felt too old-world to ignore. Inside was a single page. To Ms. Isabel Hart. You are formally invited to a reading of the last will and testament of Mr. Thaddeus Lockridge III, to be held at Lockridge Estate, Hillsford County, Massachusetts, on Thursday, 10 a.m. sharp. Identification required. Counsel present. Attendance is mandatory. Everett Langford, executor of the Lockridge Estate. I blinked. Who the hell was Thaddeus Lockridge? I reread it 3 times before the counselor at the shelter told me it wasn't a prank. There was a Lockridge Estate. A real lawyer named Everett Langford. And apparently, someone thought I was part of it. I used my only bus credit to get to the public library and Googled everything. Thaddeus Lockridge III, billionaire real estate mogul, World War II collector, eccentric philanthropist, according to headlines from the late 2000s. He died 2 weeks ago. No kids. No wife. Just rumors of private jets, secret trusts, and a 72-room estate that had its own zip code. I wasn't a Lockridge. My mom's last name was Palmer. My dad's was Hart. The closest I'd ever gotten to wealth was stealing Wi-Fi outside Starbucks. But the letter said mandatory. And honestly, I had nothing to lose. So I cleaned up as best I could, borrowed clothes from the shelter's donation bin, and caught a night bus to Hillsford. It was the longest ride of my life. The Lockridge Estate was not a house. It was a compound. Gated iron fences taller than city lampposts. Marble lions at the gate. A circular driveway big enough to land a chopper. And me, wet socks, hand-me-down slacks, and a duffel bag full of nothing. The butler, yes, there was a real butler, didn't flinch when he opened the door. Ms. Hart. I nodded. Right this way, ma'am. He led me through a hallway filled with oil paintings of people who looked like they disapprove of my entire existence. Chandeliers glittered overhead. The air smelled like pine, books, and money. I was ushered into a sunroom where 2 other people sat. A woman in a pantsuit with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. A man who looked like he'd sell yachts to billionaires for fun. Neither of them acknowledged me. Ms. Hart, said a voice behind me. Everett Langford, executor of the estate. He motioned for me to sit. Then read the will. To Isabel Hart, daughter of Evelyn Palmer Hart, granddaughter of Grace Lockridge, I bequeath my entire personal residence, Lockridge Estate, valued at approximately $100 million, including all assets within, under the following condition: she must reside in the estate for no less than 90 consecutive days from the reading of this will. Silence. Then the woman in the pantsuit slammed her palm on the table. What? The yacht guy choked on his water. Me? I nearly passed out. You're mistaken, I whispered. This can't be right. Everett looked at me calmly. Miss Hart, you are Grace Lockridge's granddaughter. Your mother, Evelyn, was disowned at 19 when she eloped with your father. Mr. Lockridge attempted reconciliation after your birth. Letters were sent. He kept track of you, even after you were no longer in contact. I sat there, dizzy. He's my great-grandfather? Granduncle, technically. But he listed you as his sole living heir. I stayed in a guest room that night. No one else said a word to me. I lay on a 4-poster bed the size of my old shelter dorm, staring at hand-painted ceilings. The walls felt like they were judging me. Or maybe just watching to see if I'd run. But I didn't. I stayed. Because something deeper than hunger or fear had awakened in me. Something like belonging. On day 3, I found the first letter hidden in a drawer in the East Wing. It was addressed to my dear Izzy. That was what my mother used to call me. The handwriting matched the one on the will. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But you're here. And that means everything. You may not know it, but you've always been a Lockridge. Not because of the blood, but because of the fire. Survive now, thrive later. That's our way. Welcome home, Izzy. I cried for 20 minutes. And when I finished, I whispered the words back. Welcome home. The East Wing of the Lockridge estate didn't feel like a place. It felt like a memory with its teeth bared. Carpet so plush it muted even the loudest steps. A library tall enough to need its own elevator. Every corner of that wing hummed with the eerie elegance of a time long past, one that didn't expect someone like me to walk its halls in thrifted jeans and mismatched socks. But I did. Because the will had said 90 days. And on day 4, I found the second letter. It was tucked inside an antique jewelry box beneath a false bottom, next to a pearl comb that looked like it had brushed the hair of ghosts. Izzy, when the walls creak, don't run. They're just trying to remember you. This house is filled with things you haven't seen, but somehow already own. Don't let the others convince you otherwise. I folded the letter slowly. The others? Who were the others? I had a few guesses. Her name was Celeste Lockridge-Stone, and apparently, she was furious. Your presence is a form of trespassing, she declared over breakfast in the glass dining room that overlooked the East Gardens. You may have the name, but you don't have the legacy. She stirred her tea without sipping it. Your grandfather would never leave this to someone who doesn't even know what escargot is. Are you always this charming, I asked, or is today special? She blinked, caught off guard. I didn't flinch. I'd slept under bridges. Her words didn't scratch. I was learning that money doesn't make people intimidating. Pain does. And I had plenty of that to go around. I started exploring every part of the house. If I was going to be challenged, I wanted to know every inch of my battlefield. There were 7 drawing rooms, 4 staircases, a greenhouse the size of my old high school gym, and behind a locked cellar door, a vault. I'd found the key in the library's first edition copy of Les Miserables. It was hollowed out, very cliché I know, but effective. Inside the vault were ledgers, deeds, stocks, and art appraisals. But tucked between the financials was a leather-bound journal titled simply, The Lockridge Tapes, written in Thaddeus's handwriting. The first entry read, I'm writing this for Isabel. Yes, her. Evelyn's daughter. She may never read this, but if she does, I want her to know, this house is hers because she's the only one who won't sell it for parts. She's fire. Like her mother. Like Grace before her. And unlike the rest, she knows what struggle means. That's the difference. The others inherited ease. She earned survival. If she wants it, the real vault is beneath the courtyard stone marked 1894. Real vault? This man had hidden a vault beneath a garden stone? On day 7, I went out to the courtyard in the middle of the night with a flashlight and a crowbar. The stone labeled 1894 was part of a decorative history path, carved to honor the year the estate was founded. I wedged the crowbar beneath it and pried it loose. Underneath, a steel hatch, with a keypad. And suddenly, I was in over my head. I told Everett Langford the next morning. He wasn't surprised. Mr. Lockridge had a flair for secrecy, he said with a tight smile. He believed that the truest parts of his legacy needed to be earned, not simply found. What's in it? I asked. Unknown. But I can tell you this, no one else in the family knew it existed. Celeste must have caught wind of something. She started following me around, lingering near whatever hallway I was in, like a particularly well-dressed ghost. You think this house will fix you? She hissed one afternoon. You'll never belong here. You think legacy is about who needs something? No. It's about who's fit to carry it. That time, I didn't respond. Because I realized something. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was terrified of me. And that gave me strength. I started digging into Thaddeus's past. He had once been homeless himself, after the Great Depression. Slept in barns. Took odd jobs. Built his empire with scraps and stubbornness. The Lockridge name wasn't built on inheritance. It was built on fight. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized. He saw himself in me. Not Celeste. Not the yacht-selling cousin. Me. I wasn't an accident in that will. I was the design. On day 11, the keypad gave. I had guessed the code, 1903, the year Grace Lockridge was born. The hatch opened with a hiss. Inside? A spiral staircase. A room lit by old bulbs. A wall of safes, documents, and a metal chest. The chest opened with a small ornate key I'd found hidden inside the vent of the master suite. It contained, for legal deeds to international properties, a signed, undeposited check for $15 million. A velvet pouch holding a diamond brooch the size of a baby's fist. And a letter. The last letter. Izzy. You found it. You passed the test. The house was never about the marble or the oil paintings. It was about the choices you'd make when no one was watching. Sell it if you want. Burn it down. Or live in it forever. The point is, it's yours. Welcome to the legacy. Thaddeus. I didn't sell it. Not then. Not yet. Because the mansion wasn't a gift. It was a mirror. And for the first time in years I saw myself in it, not as a stray girl with a duffel bag, but as a woman who had outlived her worst days. And was finally ready to decide who she wanted to be. It started with a shattered vase. Not just any vase, an antique Qing dynasty porcelain piece estimated at $90,000, according to the note Everett had attached to it when he catalogued the estate. I found it in pieces in the library one morning, glassy shards glinting across the dark mahogany floors. Celeste was already there, holding a cup of tea like nothing had happened. Oh, she said, barely glancing up. What a shame. So fragile, these heirlooms. I didn't respond. I just knelt, scooped up the fragments, and put them in a shoebox I found under the desk. I didn't cry, didn't accuse. But I started documenting everything. Because something had shifted. Celeste had stopped pretending. Now she was actively pushing me out. Day 12, the hot water shut off in the east wing. Day 13, the linens I'd washed vanished from the laundry. Day 14, a leak appeared in my ceiling. Deliberate, someone had removed the drain cap from the upstairs tub. By day 15, I wasn't just uncomfortable, I was being pushed. But she didn't realize who she was dealing with. She thought I'd fold. She thought I'd crawl back to where I came from, humiliated and invisible. But I'd slept in the back of an abandoned U-Haul in December. I'd bathed in gas station sinks. A luxury bully couldn't undo me. Not now. Not after what I'd survived. I asked Everett if I could review the house's original blueprints. He raised an eyebrow. Most heirs ask about furniture appraisals or yacht keys. You want schematics? Yes, I said. And the security system logs, if possible. To his credit, he didn't ask questions. Just had them delivered in a neat binder the next day. That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m. tracing air vents, maintenance passages, and surveillance camera placements. And I made a discovery. There was a blind spot behind the pantry. A dead zone in the camera coverage. A servant's corridor sealed off in the 90s. The perfect place for someone to move around unnoticed. Day 17, I staged a trap. I left the vault room unlocked, accidentally. Then, I placed a pressure alarm under the velvet pouch where the diamond brooch had been. Sure enough, at 3:14 a.m., the sensor went off. I waited until the morning to confront her. In front of Everett. And the cameras. Did you enjoy the tour of the vault? I asked Celeste during breakfast. Her fork froze. What are you talking about? I have footage of you entering the sealed corridor. And the motion alarm confirms your presence in the vault. Everett's jaw tightened. Ms. Lockridgestone. I was checking for structural damage, she snapped. Right. Because nothing screams engineering expertise like grabbing at a diamond pouch, I said flatly. She turned beet red. I want her removed, she hissed. She doesn't belong here. She's a charity case with a sob story. And yet, I said, rising slowly from the table, I'm the one your uncle trusted. Maybe because he knew legacy isn't about appearance, it's about character. Something you've proven you lack. She stormed out. Everett didn't follow her. Instead, he said quietly, would you like me to limit her access to the West Wing? I nodded. It was time boundaries were enforced. I began investing in the house. Not selling, not gutting, but restoring. I hired a local team of artisans to repair stained glass windows. I repainted the foyer in its original colors. I ordered books from Thaddeus's handwritten wish list to fill in missing volumes in the library. Every time I signed a check, I felt more like the woman I was meant to become. Not the charity case. Not the squatter in silk sheets. But the steward of a legacy. A protector of something sacred. And it didn't matter that some still doubted me, because I had stopped doubting myself. It wasn't all smooth. Reporters began sniffing around. Rumors about the mysterious heir inheriting Lockridge estate made their rounds on gossip blogs. Some called me a gold digger. Others claimed I forged the will. But then a letter arrived from an unlikely place. A small orphanage in Croatia. It read, Dear Isabel, your grandfather sponsored our school for 10 years. We never knew his story, only that he insisted his donations come in the name of Izzy H. We used that money to build a library. We always wondered who Izzy was. Now we know. Welcome to your legacy. From across the ocean, thank you. I cried reading it. Because it meant he hadn't just remembered me, he'd built for me. Even before I knew. Even before I believed I was worth building for. Day 25, I found the piano room. It had been sealed with caution tape. A do not enter sign posted due to water damage from years ago. But I peeled it back. And what I found wasn't mold, it was music. A 1902 Steinway Grand, still intact. Dusty, yes. But playable. I sat down. Pressed one key. And then another. I hadn't played since my mother passed. But my fingers remembered. And for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was feeling. Letting the music echo off marble, off history, off pain. I wasn't a squatter. I wasn't a mistake. I was Isabel Hart, heir to more than property. Heir to possibility. The fourth Sunday came like a whisper. The estate grounds were unusually quiet, the air thick with that early spring stillness before flowers bloom. I sat by the window of the East Library, cradling a cup of chamomile and staring at the overgrown rose hedge in the distance. It was the first time I didn't feel like an intruder in this house. But feeling peace? That was harder. Because when you've lived in chaos for years, calm feels suspicious. So I started my morning the way I had since day one, by writing letters to myself. It was something I picked up at the shelter. The counselor had said, when no one is listening, write like you are. Today's note was simple. Dear Izzy, you don't owe anyone proof of your worth. You are the legacy now. I tucked it under the blotter pad. That's when I heard the knock. It wasn't Everett. It wasn't staff. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in 7 years. The man standing on the marble stoop wasn't the brash man who had thrown my duffel out of the house and said, figure it out. This man had gray in his beard. Shame in his eyes. Isabel, he said. I saw the article. The pictures. I stepped back. You saw the money, I replied flatly. He flinched. No, he said. Yes. Maybe. But I also saw the woman. You've changed. No, I said. I just became what you refused to believe I could. We stood there, the wind brushing between us like a chasm of time. I just want to talk, he said. So I let him in. Not because I forgave him, but because I needed to hear myself say it to his face. You left me to fend for myself, I told him in the west parlor. He sat on the edge of an embroidered armchair like he didn't belong there, because he didn't. You called me dramatic when I begged you for help. You called my mom weak. You made me doubt I deserved anything but scraps. I know, he said, voice cracking. I thought tough love would fix it. I didn't know you'd vanish. I didn't vanish, I snapped. You just stopped looking. Silence. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A photo of my mother. Creased. Old. I carry her every day, he said, even when I couldn't carry the guilt. It hit harder than I expected. Because grief is strange like that. Sometimes the people who hurt us are also the ones we once loved. I didn't hug him. But I also didn't scream. I just said, I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not inviting you into my life either. This mansion? It's not a bridge. It's a boundary. And he nodded. Maybe for the first time in his life, he listened. That night, I walked through the gallery hall. It had portraits of every Lockridge heir dating back to 1836. Men in medals. Women in pearls. Jawlines like daggers. But none of them looked like me. So I called Everett the next day. I'd like to commission a new portrait, I said. He paused. Of course. Shall I schedule a photographer? No, I said. A painter. I want it timeless. Like the others. Because I wasn't just inheriting wealth. I was becoming part of the story. And that mattered. On day 30, Celeste left. No dramatic speech. No slamming doors. Just an email to Everett stating she'd pursue other ventures and respect the late Mr. Lockridge's flawed wishes. Flawed. Funny how a woman with everything could still choke on the concept of humility. But her exit wasn't a triumph. It was just necessary. Some legacies only grow when the rot leaves the soil. The public story broke the next week. The New York Standard ran a headline. From bridge to billionaire, the heiress nobody saw coming. The article was kinder than I expected. They didn't reduce me to rags to riches tropes. They mentioned the trauma, the loss, the daily rebuilding. I received hundreds of messages. One woman wrote, I've lived in my car for 2 years. Seeing you in that library gives me hope. Another said, you made me believe in redemption again. That's when I realized. This wasn't just my story. It was ours. All the silent strugglers. All the forgotten daughters. All the Izzy hearts of the world. But not everyone was cheering. A man named Darren emailed me with a cease and desist. Apparently, he was Thaddeus's former accountant. Claimed I had no legal claim. Said the will was suspiciously generous. I forwarded it to Everett. Empty threats, he said. He was fired in 2013 for embezzlement. Still, it reminded me, wealth invites wolves. So I hired a private security firm. Not to protect the assets, but the peace. Because peace is harder to earn than cash. And twice as fragile. Day 40, I opened the guest house. Not for guests, but for survivors. I partnered with a local women's shelter to create a 3-month transitional space, fully funded, no strings, private bedrooms. We called it the Heart House. The first guest, a young woman named Layla, asked me, how did you go from homeless to this? And I told her the truth. I didn't climb a ladder. I broke one apart and built a bridge with it. She cried. And I did too. One evening, I stood on the back terrace, watching the lights of Hillsford flicker. A year ago, I would have sold this place the second I had the chance. But now? I saw it as soil. A place where new things could grow. I wasn't just an heir. I was a builder. Of rooms. Of bridges. Of futures. It started with a smell. Faint, but persistent, old wood, mildew, and something metallic. I first noticed it after a thunderstorm rolled through Hillsford, washing the estate's ivy-covered walls in silver rain. The scent led me to a forgotten corridor tucked between the drawing room and the servants' staircase. A space not labeled on any of the blueprints Everett gave me. I pried open the warped door, coughed through the dust, and stepped into a hidden hallway swallowed by darkness. My flashlight flickered across cracked wallpaper, oil portraits long removed, and one thing that stopped me cold. A locked metal cabinet bolted to the floor. I stared at it, heart thudding, not with fear but anticipation. This house wasn't done speaking. Not yet. Everett arrived 20 minutes later with bolt cutters and a first aid kit, just in case. The lock snapped like it had been waiting. Inside the cabinet were file folders, dozens of them, labeled in fading cursive. Hart Estate Holdings, sealed 1979. Lockridge Confidential, not for distribution. Letters, Evelyn to TL. My mother's name. My mother's letters. Everett and I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor and read them in silence, the storm still crackling outside. They weren't love letters. They were legal drafts. Contracts. Please. Letters that revealed Evelyn Hart had once owned co-property rights to the Lockridge mansion, granted by Thaddeus in 1981 as a silent partner. She'd sold her half back during a financial crisis. Quietly. Privately. But she'd done so on one condition. That my daughter Isabel will always be remembered as part of this legacy, even if no one else ever knows it. My chest tightened. She had fought for me. Even when she had nothing. Even when she knew she might never see the reward. I wasn't a fluke in this inheritance. I was the clause. The letters changed everything. I made copies, filed them with the estate attorney, and added a new stipulation to my living trust. The Hart House project would be expanded to include 3 other properties Thaddeus had hidden under shell companies. One in Georgia. One in upstate New York. And one, my favorite, in a Colorado mountain town I'd once passed through while hitchhiking. I would call it the Evelyn Initiative. Because healing deserved a name too. But legacy doesn't sit still. On day 47, the front gates buzzed with police. Everett met them with that unshakable calm of a man who's dealt with estate squabbles for 40 years. They handed over a warrant. Celeste was suing me. Claiming I had forged Thaddeus's final will, unlawfully influenced an aging man, and committed fraudulent concealment of assets. I laughed when I read it. Everett did not. This isn't just drama, he said. She's hired a very aggressive firm. If this goes to court, everything, your story, your past, the shelter, will be dragged through the mud. I knew what that meant. Not just bad headlines, but reliving everything I'd finally buried. The winters under a top. The trauma clinics. The night I gave up my last sandwich to a boy who looked hungrier than me. I wasn't ashamed of surviving. But I wasn't eager to parade my scars for a courtroom that only cared about pedigree. Still, I didn't flinch. Because I had one thing Celeste would never understand. Proof. Not just legal, but moral. The journals. The letters. The locks. The vaults. All hidden by a man who had built mazes just to see who would care enough to find the exits. And I had found them all. Still, I needed allies. So I made a call. To Morgan Elridge, a journalist who once wrote a brutal exposé on Hillsford's elite tax evasions. I gave her the letters. The vault ledger. The entire trail. You're handing me a Pulitzer, she whispered. No, I said. I'm handing you the truth. Make it sing. 3 days later, the article dropped. The house that trauma built trended nationwide. Not just because of the mansion or the money, but because I had become something rare in the media cycle. A woman who had lost everything, and still chose to share what she found. The backlash was instant. But not for me. Celeste's law firm dropped her. An internal memo leaked that she had been less than forthcoming about family dynamics. She moved to Miami within a week. I didn't cheer. I didn't toast. I simply walked back into the East Library and whispered, thank you, to the silence. Because Thaddeus hadn't just left me a mansion. He'd left me the playbook. And I'd followed it to the final page. On day 52, I received a letter with no return address. It read, You don't know me, but I'm your half-brother. My name is Julian. Thaddeus was my grandfather too. I was told you never wanted to meet me. But I saw you on the news. And I think maybe they lied. I don't want the house. I don't want money. I just want to know where I came from. Would you meet me? I read it 4 times. A part of me wanted to rip it up. Another part wanted to weep. Because maybe legacy wasn't linear. Maybe it curved, bent, expanded. Maybe it could welcome. So I called Julian. We met at a diner in Hillsford. He was quiet, awkward, wearing a button-up 2 sizes too large. But his eyes? My mother's. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about growing up in foster care, never knowing who his father was, finding out by accident that he was connected to the Lockridge name. I thought it was a scam, he said. But then, there you were. On the news. So poised. I laughed. Poised? I'm just good at hiding my panic. He smiled. And for the first time in a while, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone in the story. Maybe this wasn't the end of the line. Maybe it was the middle of a much bigger one. The first gala invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock embossed in gold. The Hillsford Heritage Foundation cordially invites Miss Isabel Hart. I read it 3 times, then laughed aloud in the drawing room. Not because it was funny, but because this was the same organization that once denied my request for sleeping in their courtyard after being kicked out of a youth shelter. They didn't remember me, of course. They remembered the mansion, the headlines, the unexpected heiress. But I remembered everything. The nights I stared up at that same ballroom roof from the sidewalk, wondering what kind of people wore dresses that shimmered like moons. Now I was being asked to donate one. Funny how circles complete themselves. I didn't go to the gala. Instead, I hosted my own. Not a party. A dedication. The Evelyn Initiative was officially launching its 3rd restored estate, this one in Colorado. A snow-dusted cedar-framed lodge once left to rot in the hills, now turned into a trauma recovery center for women with nowhere left to go. I flew there with Everett, Julian, and Layla. Layla now served as operations manager for Hart House Hillsford. Julian? He'd become the foundation's director of legacy relations. Turns out he was an excellent speaker, quiet but magnetic. The dedication ceremony was intimate. No press. No donors. Just people who knew pain. People who wanted to help someone else survive it. I spoke last. And I didn't read from cards. I read from my heart. I stand here not because I was given everything, I said. I stand here because I lost everything more than once, and still chose not to disappear. This house isn't a miracle. It's a mirror. It reflects what's possible when someone believes you're worth the risk. They clapped. Some cried. And for the first time, I felt something more powerful than wealth. Purpose. Back at the Lockridge estate, life found rhythm. I woke at 6 each morning, walked the garden trail with an old rescued greyhound named Dottie, and made time to sit alone with tea and a notebook. Every day, I wrote 5 things. 1 thing I forgave. 1 person I missed. 1 boundary I wouldn't bend. 1 lesson I'd learned. 1 risk I'd still take. It kept me grounded. Because in a world of marble floors and designer invitations, it was easy to lose the woman who once read dog-eared books under bus stop lamps. But I never wanted to lose her. She had earned me. The house changed too. Not just with renovations, but in spirit. Gone were the portraits of long-dead men with hollow eyes. I replaced them with art from local creators, poetry on the stairwell walls, and quotes from women who'd changed history. On the door of the West Wing I had engraved, "What you survive becomes what you steward." It was more than a home now. It was a movement. Then one night, I got the call. The City Planning Committee had approved my petition to convert the Lockridge Estates and used Northern Acreage into the Hart Gardens, a public sanctuary and memorial green space. Free access. No gates. No reservations. A place where no one could be turned away. The project would take 2 years. Cost millions. But I didn't flinch. Because I understood now. Legacy wasn't what you left behind. It was what you lifted while you stayed. A year to the day since I found the will, I hosted a gathering. No suits. No PR. Just 15 women. All survivors. All once homeless. Some were pregnant. Some were working. Some were still trembling. I cooked them dinner myself. Lasagna. Garlic bread. We laughed like old friends. And then without warning one of them, Naomi, asked, Do you still feel homeless? The question hit like lightning. Because I'd never said it aloud, but I'd thought it often. The silk sheets. The chandeliers. The silence at night. It still felt like I was squatting in someone else's dream. But I answered honestly. I don't feel homeless, I said. I feel rebuilt. They nodded. Because they knew what I meant. Sometimes, it's not about returning home. It's about becoming one. As the moon rose over Hillsford that night, I sat on the marble balcony with Dottie at my feet. The town glowed in the distance, tiny lights like fireflies. Somewhere below, people walked by the gate, some probably still whispering about the heiress who came out of nowhere. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Because the truth wasn't mine alone anymore. It belonged to every soul who'd ever been left behind. I wasn't a rags to riches tale. I was a rubble to rebuild reality. And my mansion? It was just the foundation. The real empire was the network of women who'd now walk into the world believing something impossible. That they were worthy of peace. Of power. Of permanence. And that their stories mattered, no matter where they started.